The Tide's in Madtown. We've got early rivalries up in the Pacific Northwest. And Indiana is traveling to Pasadena? Big Ten breakfast is now served.
All right, it is now week 3 of Big Ten breakfast. You see our names, Dan under me, Ty under Ty. That's how it works when you watch video. I can't wait for this week. We have got big topics, big questions. We have our eaters, and of course, we have, I would argue, the best breakfast burritos in the Big Ten, but I haven't eaten all of them.
It looks so good. It really does.
It looks so incredible. We'll get there. My first question to you is, let's actually go back in time a couple days because we are sitting at an interesting position in the Big Ten season. I want to ask you, this is my term for it, who is your cold brew Big Ten team of the moment, a.k.a. jolting the conference awake?
It's Ohio State. The answer is Ohio State. Ohio State beat Western Michigan 56-0 last week. Not a big deal that they would beat Western Michigan, but it is a big deal just when watching what this team did. Jeremiah Smith, the speed with which he has become the best offensive threat in that receiver room for Ohio State should jolt everybody awake, should make everybody a little bit concerned. We saw Quinshon Judkins get more into the flow of the game. Will Howard seems like he's settling in. It's hard to imagine this team getting better with age, but if that is the case, certainly that's a moment to jolt everybody in the Big Ten.
Yeah, especially with the addition of Jeremiah Smith, with how great the defense has looked early on now with Caleb Downs. It's almost like we've already defeated Piston Honda, and now there's a super Piston Honda? We already beat Don Flamenco. There's a super Don Flamenco? I'm going to go with a separate tier, speaking of tiers, and with what Illinois has done early on through 2 games. I'm not saying they're jolting everybody awake. I'm not saying everybody's going to be scared of the Illini with what they've done against Eastern Illinois and Kansas, but the manner in which they specifically beat Kansas, Luke Altmaier late, the big catches, the defensive stops, the turnovers, right? This defense fell off a cliff last season. And specifically, they really were not good against Kansas in Lawrence. And so if early returns mean anything with what the Illini have done early, and that's receivers making plays, Altmaier looking steady, and the defense looking more stout than perhaps we expected. They have Nebraska and Penn State, I believe, both on the road after this week against Central Michigan. And I'm not saying those teams are going to lose necessarily to Illinois, but those teams have looked a little bit vulnerable, especially Illinois taking on Penn State in their first half against Bowling Green or Nebraska's second half. I don't know. They become kind of a pain, more of a pain than I anticipated. By the way, still bad blood, at least among 7 to 11 Illinois fans over Bill Self going to Kansas. So it feels good. It feels good, Ty. Next question. Man, this is going to be a tricky one to me and hopefully for you. But speaking of teams crawling back, we've got both Purdue and Wisconsin as double-digit dogs to teams from outside the conference, major programs from outside the conference. Of course, Wisconsin hosting Alabama, Purdue hosting Notre Dame. Between Purdue and Wisconsin, who would you rather be heading into week 3?
Oh, I'd rather be Purdue.
Okay.
Wisconsin's not going to beat Alabama. Sorry, Wisconsin people. That's not going to happen. But Purdue catches Notre Dame in a really, really interesting spot right now. Notre Dame is still licking its wounds from a week ago after losing to Northern Illinois. There have been quotes from Marcus Freeman that the team is hungry and focused and angry and ready to go. And frankly, we heard those quotes a week ago before they lost. This is a Purdue team. We've called them the spoiler makers in the past, have we not, Dan?
Absolutely.
With good reason. This point spread is only about 10 points. Clearly, Vegas looks at this and says, we think Notre Dame's going to win, but we don't necessarily see a runaway train. Without knowing what the Notre Dame passing attack is going to be now with Riley Leonard, it hasn't looked good. Knowing that Purdue has been in these games before and has played Notre Dame tight, I would much rather be the Boilermakers at this point in time.
Yeah, I don't hate that answer. The only reason why I think I'd say Wisconsin is the Luke Fickell experience and factor as a head coach in big games. The defense, I think, is starting out at a more proven place to me than where Purdue is. I do like that Purdue is coming off of the bye week, by the way, ahead of this big game. And also that you can at least cross your fingers that maybe Wisconsin has been saving a bunch ahead of this Alabama game, that they really haven't, tried to show a ton against, a couple of not down opponents, but not noteworthy opponents like Alabama is, and that they're just getting their footing, they're getting into a rhythm, and that We know that stadium, we know Camp Randall can be a frenzied place for a school to come in and win, at least against a pretty good defense. And so Alabama coming off of a shaky performance, now taking on a tough team or a tough defense on the road. I don't know. I think situationally, heading to Camp Randall this week after where they were last week, I think it can be a bit of a landmine.
Yeah, I mean, I get why you would answer with Wisconsin. The one thing I did not hear you mention, though, was the Wisconsin offense, Dan. Was that by design? Did you mean to leave them out?
I'm just misdirecting like a good magician, Ty.
Because when I look at this Wisconsin offense, sure, maybe we can make the case that they're not showing their full complement of weaponry. Sure, maybe it's still early and they're getting acquainted with their new quarterback, Tyler Van Dyke. But I am not going to just assume we're suddenly going to see new tricks against a team like in Alabama.
All right, agree to disagree, but these should be two fun games. Hopefully, knock on wood, hopefully fun games. Let's stick with the major program theme for the moment. Which team do you think in the Big Ten, I mentioned a cold brew team of the week, who's your chamomile team of the week? The potential to perform in a manner that has their fans relaxing, as if they're sipping some chamomile on a comfortable couch with a breeze swaying in the air, Ty.
Isn't that what every college football fan wants, Dan? Just a nice, warm cup of chamomile. Just a nice, chill experience while watching your team on a Saturday. I think the answer is Oregon. I think the only answer is Oregon here because in weeks 1 and 2, it was unimpressive. We expected a lot more from the Ducks than a 10-point win over Idaho. A last
3-point win against Boise State,
over Boise State, being run over by Ashton Ginty. We expected a lot more. And now coming into week 3, it's a rivalry on the road in a weird place to play in Corvallis, Oregon, where the Beavers clearly have a lot to play for. This is a meaningful game for them after they were left for dead by the Oregon Ducks as they went off to the Big Ten. So Oregon State's look good. Oregon has definitely left a lot to be desired. If Oregon can go out there and assert its will, I think it's going to go a long way towards easing the fan base.
Yeah, it's also a rivalry game, right? It's also the big in-state rivalry game. So you start out your day sort of, I think it's 12:30 out west kickoff, and then you start out winning in that kind of fashion over an in-state rival. That's very relaxing.
For sure.
I'm going to go Michigan. Michigan deeply in need of some chamomile tea type Saturday action. They have Arkansas State, which should not be anywhere near the challenge, obviously, that Texas was last week. But the questions persist about Davis Warren, the passing game, the offensive line. I don't think there are a lot of questions about the defense, but perhaps some playmakers on offense. Who's going to step up? Arkansas State should offer that opportunity to get into a rhythm, for the offensive line to feel more comfortable playing as a single unit, for Davis Warren to have cleaner pockets, for receivers to run better routes against the Arkansas State secondary. And so Michigan, especially with USC on deck in Ann Arbor the following week, it'd be nice to be able to relax your shoulders and think about an offense that's growing. It's not going to be where it was, but at least heading in the right direction with Davis Warren, because there really doesn't seem to be another option. So get comfortable with Davis Warren, lean on Colston Loveland, who, made a couple mistakes last week, but I think will improve this week against Arkansas State. I think they're the ones that are definitely due for some chamomile.
Yeah, and Arkansas State, by the way, is not a bad team.
No.
Arkansas State is, I think, potentially a sleeper in the Sun Belt, but did not play a lick of defense a year ago. I don't know if that's set to improve this season at all. So to your point, whether it's Davis Warren, whether it's someone in the receiver room, whether it's the backs, somebody has an opportunity on the Michigan offense to get things rolling in a big way. All right, let's go here next. Which team playing out west has, in your mind, the biggest opportunity to establish a fun new era of Big Ten football?
I'm going to say Washington. I'm going to say Washington just because we haven't seen them against a team with a heartbeat. All due respect to Weber State and Eastern Michigan, but Washington with Will Rogers, Jonah Coleman, a brand new defense, new receivers, new offensive line, everything's new, including the coaching staff. So the opportunity Washington has in a rivalry game, sort of at home, it's in Seattle, but not at their home stadium, to show off what this new era of Washington football can and will be, no pun intended, with Will Rogers, I think it's a huge opportunity. Their schedule is, I think, more backloaded than anything when you look at what's coming up. They still have an opportunity to develop before some of the tougher teams, offenses and defenses, on their schedule. So I think they have a really nice opportunity to begin showing off what they can be under Jed Fish against a Wazoo team that ran the hell out of the ball last week. So it's really a defensive opportunity, if nothing else, for Washington.
And we both like John Mateer on the Washington State side, do we not? So this is going to pose a real challenge for the Washington Huskies in the Apple Cup, another rivalry game.
Who do you have?
My answer is the undisputed Big Ten ambassador to the West Coast in the form of the Indiana Hoosiers, baby.
Wow.
I've got Kurt Cignetti tattooed across my chest at this point. I love what this guy has done. I love the vibe that he has set since he set foot on the basketball court way back when and took this job in Bloomington. This is a decent Indiana offense. They scored 77 odd points a week ago. They are riding high. They've got a good quarterback. They've got a good receiver room. It feels to me like they've got vibes. And now they are favored on the road against UCLA. Wow. UCLA team with a new coach trying to sort out some stuff in their own right. So Indiana, if Indiana goes west and can somehow knock off UCLA and start the season 3-0, those would be great vibes in Bloomington. And it would be an interesting mix of teams now going out west, playing against these traditional Pac-12 schools. I'm curious to see how this one shakes out.
It's a really interesting opportunity for UCLA to ascend to the mean and Indiana to regress to the mean all at the same time. UCLA coming off of a bye week, Indiana beating up on a couple of down programs, whether it's Western Illinois and FIU. Indiana's resume it's fine. They did what needed to be done and they took care of business. But it is a fascinating matchup. UCLA has the opportunity too, by the way, after a really lackluster performance against Hawaii to... If Indiana is indeed pretty good, that's an opportunity for UCLA as well to sort of open up a new coaching era and announce themselves to the world.
There he is. It's the big guy.
All right, Dan, this is Big Ten Breakfast. Of course, we care about what the viewers out there are eating. But I ask you now, who in the Big Ten will be feasting in their matchups this week?
All right, great question. We mentioned Michigan, Arkansas State, so I'm going to go Colston Loveland. I think he's going to get right. I think he's going to be that safety valve for Davis Warren as they start to hopefully begin to get right against a defense that I think is gettable.
It's very gettable. I actually have a similar answer. Mine is Donovan Edwards.
Okay.
Donovan Edwards has not been right so far. They have struggled to find ways to utilize him, just 3.6 yards per carry. Ooh. This is a generous defense against whom Michigan should be able to run the football. So Donovan Edwards, dynamic playmaker, would like to see what he can do in this game against Arkansas State. Who else you got?
I'm going to go Caleb Johnson for Iowa, running in, at, through, over, around your Jared Parker, Troy Trojans. I think their defense has been horrendous thus far early. Caleb Johnson, we saw what he could do against a good defense in Iowa State. I think he's going to continue that and sort of run away with a ton of yardage against Troy.
Yeah, if you look at the numbers on the Troy defensive side, 120th nationally in QBR allowed. That is not good. And that favors Cade McNamara, my answer. Cade McNamara, I would like to see this passing attack ratchet itself back up. I would like to see what these guys can do with a few more weeks under their belt, hopefully get Iowa to the point where they're not just exclusively a rushing team, and we get to see Cade stretch the field a little bit.
I agree. I'm going to go with my final answer of Justice Ellison, not just because the name is great, but because he's been excellent early on against not great competition, but going against this UCLA front that had to replace a lot and is unproven in the moment. I think UCLA is going to be focusing a lot on the Indiana passing attack. So I'm going to go with Justice Ellison to keep that train rolling.
I'm going to go Dylan Thieneman with my off the beaten path answer.
Nice.
For my final guy here for who's eating. It's there for him. This is not a Notre Dame passing attack that looked all that confident in the first 2 weeks of the season. Dylan Thieneman burst onto the scene a year ago for Purdue, obviously has a nose for the football. I think we could see him be very, very active in this game. Maybe he's not picking off passes, but he is the type of defensive back that they're going to find a way to utilize and make him part of every play. Riley Leonard needs to know where he is at all times. So don't be surprised if you look at the box score on Sunday morning and see that this kid had a big game.
You're in no position to challenge my expertise.
Now, Ty, the rubber meets the road. It's one thing to talk about who you like. It's one thing to talk about the stories that are scratching you where you itch. But my question now is, who you got against the spread? Let's start here. Let's start with Bama, Wisconsin, a big number. Where are you going?
I'm going Bama. I'd love to go Wisconsin at home, but I just don't think they've got what it takes to hang with them for 4 quarters. Might hang with them for a while, but 60 minutes, I'm on Bama minus 4.
in my notes, I scratched out Wisconsin, scratched out Bama, scratched out Wisconsin, stayed with Bama. It's a big number, but you got to like something about Wisconsin. We talked about this on the show, and I think the ceiling for Alabama, even on the road, even after playing sloppily, has my vote with the Tide. Where are you going with the Platypus Cup, Ty? Oregon State, and Corvallis. Oregon favored comfortably here.
For the second straight game, I am going non-Big Ten team.
Ooh.
Give me Oregon State plus the points. They're at home. We know this is a meaningful rivalry for them given circumstances, but more on the Oregon side. I think they win this game. I think it's 31-21, somewhere in that neighborhood. I am just taking a little bit of a pause on my Oregon optimism because we have not seen that offense get to a point yet where it seems like they're firing on all cylinders. There's a lot that needs to be improved, and until I see it, I'm actually going to go the other direction. So give me Oregon State.
I don't blame you. See it before being told it, right? I'm going to go Oregon here, and it's probably my green and yellow lenses that you can't really tell I'm wearing right now. But at a certain point, there's going to be too much value. And I think the Oregon State team, especially on defense, is susceptible. Even coming after a shutout against San Diego State last week, I think Oregon should be able to run the ball well enough. That play action is going to open up. I think they're going to shoot themselves in the foot less. The offensive line appears to be healthier. I think they're going to make a nice move in Corvallis this week. So we disagree on that one. Washington Wazoo. Let's stay in the Pacific Northwest. In Seattle, but it's not at Husky Stadium. It's at the home of the Seahawks. Who you got?
I do like the Big Ten team here. I like Washington a lot because counter to what I think we've seen on the Oregon side, I do think Washington has gotten better through their first 2 weeks of the season. So
okay.
I think Will Rogers has improved. I like their ground game. I had Jonah Coleman eating on this show a week ago. I think that will be a trend that continues. It wouldn't surprise me if we see a lot of points in this game. I don't know where both teams are at defensively, but I do like where the Washington offense is at. So give me the Huskies.
I'm going Wazoo here to cover and win outright. I think
outright.
Outright. The continuity of John Mateer in that program with how well they ran the ball against Texas Tech, and we don't know what Texas Tech is truly, but there is something about so much being new for Washington in a big game with a lot of emotion. I'm going to roll with the continuity with Wazoo. Feeling good. I think vibes are high right now in Pullman, so I'm going with the Cougs.
This would be meaningful if they could knock off Washington, given circumstances, right?
Yes.
This would make the blood boil. Yeah.
Purdue, Notre Dame. Talk to me.
I don't know. I don't know what to think of this game. Notre Dame should win this game by 24 points. Full stop.
Mm-hmm.
They should win this game by 24 points. But Purdue is coming off a bye. Notre Dame is still licking its wounds to some extent after that ridiculous loss at home against Northern Illinois. I will still take the Irish to win and cover, but I do not feel good about it. I just don't know where this team is at offensively after the big spend to go out and get Mike Denbrock.
Yeah.
We are waiting to see the results of that. Maybe it's taking a while to actually kick in, but give me Notre Dame. I don't feel great about it.
I'm going to go Purdue. I don't think they're going to win this game. I think Notre Dame wins this game. I think winning will become a skill after last week for Notre Dame. But there is something about Purdue coming off a bye week. I think the vibes are going to be better in West Lafayette. It's going to be a great atmosphere. Ultimately, I think Notre Dame has too many ways to win, but I'm still going to take those points. So, I don't know. Final game to pick here, Ty. Let's go with Virginia, Maryland. We haven't talked about this one yet, but Maryland, to me, who I'm taking in this one, I think they lost in a winning effort last week against Michigan State, and I think Virginia won in a losing effort. And I think everything sort of returns to equilibrium here. And I think Maryland, who was really strong on third down, Virginia was not. Maryland didn't run the ball well, but I think they should be able to against Virginia's front. So I'm going to go with Maryland in a classic ACC matchup that is not. I'm going to go with Maryland here to take down Virginia on the road.
So look, we know that point spreads move. But everywhere you look, and I don't care when you saw the line for this game, it's about a field goal-ish, give or take. It's because everyone knows this is going to be a close game. Everyone knows Virginia is a tough out. And I think we know at this point that Maryland can score. Maryland's got really good skill talent. I have liked what we have seen from Maryland through 2 weeks, despite final results, despite records, all that stuff. I still think this is a better team than I gave them credit for before we kicked off this season. So I am with you. I'm with Maryland, even though this one's on the road.
We're going to agree on something even more so right now, Ty. And that is If you are in Pasadena, and this is Big Ten breakfast after all, you are in for the probable best greasy handheld, easy Ty, breakfast you can get in this coast-to-coast conference. Ty, look at these breakfast burritos from Lucky Boy.
Look at that.
These are considered A-list, top tier, elite tier, S tier, whatever you want to say, in terms of breakfast burritos in LA. Probably the best breakfast burrito area in the world.
Dan, that's considered an endangered species. Look at that. That's amazing. What is that? What's that called?
I don't know. It's just a breakfast burrito from Lucky Boy.
The famous
classic
burrito.
whatever.
It's called the famous burrito.
Oh, the famous burrito, right. It's bacon and home fries and eggs and cheddar cheese and a griddled tortilla. You can get chorizo, you can get avocado, you can get sausage, you can get veggie. You can sort of mix and match whatever you want in their gigantic, obviously notorious burritos. I'd probably go chorizo and avocado. I think that's my favorite. I don't think there's a wrong answer here. Here's the warning for you, Ty, and anybody who finds themselves in Pasadena ahead of a UCLA game. If you go in the morning and get one of these breakfast burritos, you will miss most of the day of college football asleep or lethargic on the couch. They're enormous. Split one with a loved one or a friend or whoever's in the area.
You need to commit to that bit.
Yes.
And start your day off in a heavy capacity if you eat that. Put that back up on the screen, though. Show this to the people.
Yes, there it is.
I'm going to make that my Twitter avatar, Dan. I love that. I want that as my order. I don't even care what's in it. I want to hang that picture up on my wall somewhere. I don't know how my wife would feel about that. But that just looks like a work of art. Mm-hmm. And I love a good breakfast burrito, so count me in.
It's like the size of a wrapped up sea otter in a in a tortilla. But everything tastes better, by the way, in that yellow paper. You look at that and you're like, oh, this is great. And of course, this has been another episode of Big Ten Breakfast. So on that note, on that delicious, greasy, sexy note, thank you everybody for watching, and hopefully your Big Ten team or Big Ten rooting interest comes through for you this weekend. My name is Dan. He is Ty. See you soon.